So we still got a couple of months until the 2025 season starts. We could potentially have 6 drivers competing for the title. And in 2024, we saw one of the closest grids we have seen in years. It was the first time since 2012 that we've seen 7 drivers win different races. Finally felt like F1 was starting to get unpredictable and competitive again, especially after how boring 2023 was. And I feel like 2024 definitely helped me fall back in love with F1. 2026, we're going to see a brand new regulation change, meaning teams are going to be more focused on 2026 rather than 2025. By judging how close the field was in 2024, there's no reason it shouldn't be the same in 2025. Just this time throughout the whole season and not just after Miami. The last time we had a season before a regulation change was 2021, and that ended up being one of the most historic and most amazing seasons any F1 fan will ever see, even though it did get ruined in the end by Michael Massey and maybe even drove a few fans out of the sport because of how controversial Abu Dhabi 2021 was. So here's why I think in 2025 it's going to be one of the closest seasons we've seen in F1 for quite a while. Before we get into the video, comment down below what your thoughts are on 2025 and who you think will win the championship this season, and do you think it will be close? In the past year, F1's gone from the most predictable it's ever been to probably the most unpredictable it's ever been, which was really good to see because I feel like F1 needed a bit more competitiveness. I think people were getting sick of Red Bull dominating. Now, Red Bull, who were dominating, have lost key personnel. Adrian Newey being the biggest loss in all of this. Adrian Newey is a legend within F1 because of how many championship winning cars he's designed. He was at Red Bull since I think about 2009, 2008, maybe even a bit further back. And for Red Bull to lose Adrian Newey is a huge loss. Like when Man United lost Ferguson, it's a huge loss for them, and I think that could impact Red Bull a bit this season. I feel like without Adrian Newey, Red Bull really are going to struggle to develop their car as the season goes on, and maybe even furthermore into 2026. I feel like as a result of that, Verstappen will struggle to win his 5th World Championship this season. I also don't think Liam Lawson's quite ready for a championship fight yet because this is his first full season in F1, as well as Kimi Antonelli. Verstappen also lost his head on quite a few occasions last season, and I feel like that will happen again this season, which might make for some interesting viewing. Despite all that, I think Red Bull still will have quite a competitive car and will be up there. The reason why 2025 is going to be so close is because the current F1 cars are so reliable. We hardly ever see anyone going out of a race now with an engine blowout, apart from Alpine, but they're moving to Mercedes engines now. Because the cars are so reliable now, I feel like drivers can push more in races because they don't have to worry about managing their engine or damaging it. It also seems like Charles Leclerc's finally found consistency and is ready for a championship battle. We all know that if Leclerc's given a race-winning car, he can win a lot of races. And I feel like if Ferrari are finally consistent this season, Leclerc will grab quite a few wins. Also, I feel like this season Ferrari will finally be an actual contender for the championship, which they haven't been since 2018. I know obviously last season they nearly won the Constructors, but I'm talking more about the Drivers' Championship because over the course of last season, Leclerc and Sainz weren't really able to find consistent results to fight for the Drivers' title. However, because Perez was so bad at Red Bull, it really cost Red Bull in the Constructors. And McLaren threw away quite a lot of points, allowing Ferrari to be up there in the Constructors' title, which is why they were close in the Constructors and not in the Drivers' Championship. I feel like Fred Vasseur is finally starting to turn things around in Ferrari. He's done a really, really good job since he came in, and having Lewis Hamilton on board as well can only help improve things further because obviously Hamilton knows what it's like to be in a race-winning team, to be in a championship-winning team, and that's what he's gone to Ferrari to do. Towards the end of last season, Ferrari were really consistent and really starting to fight for wins on more of a regular basis. Season as well, McLaren also finally started winning races again, and Zak Brown and Andreas Seidel have finally got McLaren back to where they belong. The lineup at McLaren is one of the best on the grid in Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. I think both of them are very talented young drivers. I don't think Piastri's quite ready yet to win a championship, but he's got to be in a fight this season if he can find consistency. I think last season consistency was a big problem with a lot of the teams and some of the drivers as well, especially Piastri. We know now McLaren have what it takes to win a Constructors' Championship, but are they ready for the Drivers' Championship? I think they are. I think if things go their way, Lando can have a chance at the championship this season. He's got to stop losing the lead so often into turn 1. If he can sort out his starts, then he's going to gain a lot of points from that. Mercedes also could be in a fight for the Drivers' Championship this season with George Russell. That's if they can finally find a way to understand their car. I think Mercedes had a worse team when it comes to consistency out of the 4 big teams in F1. Since 2022, they've never really been able to understand their car completely. There's some race weekends where they're the best team on the grid. Look at Silverstone last season and Las Vegas. However, there's some race weekends where they're probably the worst big team on the grid. I also hope Mercedes and Red Bull are on a similar page this season because of what happened between Russell and Verstappen. I feel like if Russell and Verstappen had to get into a scenario this season where they're battling each other on track, it's going to get really interesting because we all know now they don't like each other and it's going to be really personal between them. Now, I'm not saying it's good to see drivers hate each other, but I'm saying it's good to see a potential rivalry in F1 because we saw how feisty it can get between Mercedes and Red Bull in 2021, and it'd be so good to see that again. I think that's what made 2021 even better, was the rivalry between Mercedes and Red Bull and Hamilton and Verstappen, because it added a bit of a story into it. It gripped you into that season and made you want to keep watching every single race. And I feel like Russell and Verstappen not getting on will just add to the drama in 2025. Also, because of the 2026 regulations, teams aren't going to focus too much on their current cars after about the 5th round. Therefore, meaning if the teams are really, really close after the 5th round, it's probably going to be like that for the rest of the season because it is so important to get a new regulation change right, because if you don't get a new regulation change right, you're going to be nowhere near in that next season. And especially for the 4 big teams, that's something they have to avoid because they're big brands and sponsors for them are going to want to go away from them teams if they're competing at the bottom. So because they're going to be focusing so much on 2026, 25 is going to be so close. I think going into this season as well, McLaren and Ferrari are going to be exactly as quick as each other. And usually when you have 2 teams at the top in F1 who have no difference between them, you go into each race weekend not knowing who's going to win that race, and it then makes it more exciting because races aren't just won on pure performance off a car, won more by strategy. I remember back in 2021 where Mercedes and Red Bull were really close, and we came to Spain where Hamilton and Verstappen were no different between each other, and Verstappen got past Hamilton into turn 1 at the start of the race. Then obviously Mercedes played Red Bull at a game of strategies, and it's so good to see a good strategic race in F1 and probably some of the most exciting F1 races because obviously Mercedes pitted 20 laps towards the end, and because Hamilton was already so close to Verstappen, if Verstappen was to pit the next lap, then he would have come out the pits behind Hamilton. So obviously Red Bull didn't pit Verstappen, and then you could see each lap Hamilton was closing and closing the gap down to Verstappen, and it made it so gripping and entertaining to watch because you were debating in your head whether or not Hamilton was going to catch Verstappen, and if he did catch Verstappen, would he be able to overtake him? Hopefully in 2025 we're going to see more races like that. It's going to be so good to see 4 different teams competing for the title potentially, and it's something F1 fans have been wanting to see for quite a while. The last time we had more than 2 competitive teams on the grid was 2012, which is 13 years ago now. That is so scary. 2012 is 13 years ago. So it's been a long time coming in F1 for there to be a really close season between multiple teams, and I feel like 2025 is finally going to be that season. I think the championship this season is going to come down to which tracks suit which cars and which cars suit the most tracks. For example, Silverstone might suit the McLaren better than it does the Ferrari or the Red Bull or the Mercedes, but then in another weekend like Monaco, it might suit the Red Bull more, and then other weekends Mercedes might have the best car. Comment down below what your predictions are for 2025 and how close you think it's going to be. It's also going to be a really interesting season for Lewis Hamilton this year, and if you want to see my thoughts about Hamilton going to Ferrari, click on this video here. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next one.